When you're learning English and you feel, well, maybe pretty confident with the grammar rules, you've memorized vocabulary lists, you're doing great on the textbook stuff,
Yeah.
and then you actually step outside into the real world. You try and say, order a coffee, or maybe ask someone for directions, or even just, make basic small talk.
Yeah.
And suddenly the English you're hearing, it's not quite what you were expecting. And the English you need to speak feels different.
Yeah.
Maybe even like impossible for a hot second.
Oh, absolutely. That gap.
That gap, exactly. That feeling, that disconnect between like the classroom and the cafe,
Yeah.
or the textbook and the train station.
Yeah.
That's really the core of what we're diving into today.
Mhm.
We've got a whole pile of sources here, stuff you shared with us, full of these really relatable situations, personal stories, and some very practical advice. And it's all about bridging that gap, isn't it? Mastering real-life English conversations.
Yeah, and the examples you mentioned are perfect. Like Daniel trying to get a croissant in New York. He knows the word, right?
Right. He knows croissant.
But he says it and blank stares
Mhm.
until someone else says it differently. Or Emma in Canada, completely thrown by touch base. What does that even mean if you haven't heard it?
Or Mark. Just wanting a coffee, simple enough, you'd think. And then bam, this super fast for here to go. And he's just like guessing.
Exactly. And these moments, they feel awkward, maybe a bit embarrassing even.
Totally.
But the sources we looked at, they really frame them as these crucial learning points, like wake-up calls.
Right. So what's really interesting looking through all this material is how it paints this picture of authentic English. It's so dynamic.
It really is. It's not just about knowing the dictionary definition of words. It's about catching the sounds, how things actually sound when people talk fast. It's about understanding the speed, the rhythm.
The tone of voice.
Exactly. And navigating all the specific little phrases people use in, well, countless everyday situations. So our mission here, really drawing from all these experiences and the advice in these sources, it's not just to list off the problems.
Right.
It's more about pulling out the core ideas, the practical tips, the mindset shifts even that these sources are suggesting to help you not just like get by, but actually feel more confident and thrive in those real conversations.
Yeah, exactly. We want to go beyond just saying, oh, it's different. We need to unpack why it feels so different and, crucially, how these sources suggest you can actually, tackle it. We'll try and group some of these common hurdles and the solutions people found, pulling out specific examples, the advice that really seems to work.
It's kind of like getting a backstage look at how real English operates, isn't it? Through the eyes of people who've been through it.
Yeah, I like that. A backstage pass.
And something the sources stress over and over again. This isn't about suddenly sounding like a native speaker overnight or, losing your accent completely. That's not the goal. It's much more about building your ability to recognize what's being said, understanding the context, really training your ear for those natural speech patterns. And importantly, getting the confidence to just engage, to try things out, learn from it, and recover when maybe it doesn't go perfectly.
And listening seems key.
Oh, fundamental. The material really positions active listening as the bedrock. That's how you start to notice and absorb all these real-life nuances.
Okay, so where should we start? A lot of the sources seem to kick off with those everyday things, right? The simple transactions, the brief interactions that look easy on paper but can trip you up.
Yeah, like ordering food, asking for directions, dealing with customer service.
Daniel's croissant store you mentioned.
Yeah.
That feels like a perfect starting point. He knew the word croissant. He probably spelled it right, maybe even practiced the dictionary pronunciation.
Pretty clearly, perhaps.
But then, in a noisy cafe, spoken at natural speed, the cashier just didn't get it until someone else chimed in with something that sounded more like, what was it, croissant?
Something like that, yeah. And that immediately flags one of the biggest differences the sources talk about, pronunciation on its own versus pronunciation in, connected fast speech. Native speakers, they tend to squash vowel sounds, link words so they flow together. Sounds change depending on what's next to them. That T at the end of croissant, maybe it gets dropped, maybe it's a glottal stop. The vowels might shift depending on the region. So what Daniel hit wasn't really a vocabulary problem. It was more about recognizing the sound as it's actually produced in the wild, at speed, with a particular accent. And maybe his own production wasn't quite matching that real-world target.
So the takeaway isn't just learn the pronunciation. It's more like learn to recognize lots of pronunciations and how they morph when people speak quickly or casually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which implies that your listening diet needs to include real, unscripted talk. Not just those super clear, slow audio tracks you sometimes get in learning materials.
Makes sense. And then there's the meaning side, too. David, another example from the sources, he struggled with something like grab a bite.
Ah, yeah, idioms.
Right. He learned English formally. He knew grab, he knew bite. Put them together. Grab a bite. Made zero sense to him. Literally. Like physically grabbing a bite out of something.
Understandable confusion, because grab a bite is totally idiomatic. It's a chunk, a fixed phrase where the meaning of the whole thing, get something quick to eat, is completely different from just adding up the words.
And the sources seem to say real-life English is just packed with these things, right? Idioms, phrasal verbs, set expressions.
Absolutely saturated with them. Emma's confusion with touch base is another classic example you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's super common, especially in work context. Just means check in or connect briefly. But if you haven't encountered it, your brain goes to, well, touching a base, like in baseball.
Which is logical. If you're just looking at the words, and that must be so frustrating, you understand every single word, but the sentence is gibberish.
It really can be. And the sources argue pretty strongly that these aren't just like quirky exceptions you learn later. They're fundamental. They're how people actually talk.
Yeah.
If you want to sound natural and understand native speakers, you've got to get a handle on them.
Okay, so the idiomatic jungle. How do the sources suggest navigating it? Just memorize long lists?
Not exactly, no. The common thread, especially looking at David and Emma's stories, seems to be exposure. Lots and lots of listening.
Back to listening.
Yep. David apparently started tuning into local podcasts and just paid more attention during casual chats at lunch. He specifically listened out for phrases that didn't click immediately.
Okay.
And Emma, she figured out touch base because she kept hearing her colleagues use it in meetings, in emails. Eventually, the context made the meaning clear. The material really implies that context is your best friend for idioms.
Right. You hear it used, you see what's going on, and it just clicks. In a way that maybe a dictionary definition doesn't quite capture.
Exactly. David learning wrap things up, meaning, finish the meeting just by hearing his manager say it at the end of meetings. That's presented as a perfect example of learning from context.
So it's less about rote memorization and more about developing. Like idiom radar. Noticing them when they pop up in real conversations and figuring them out from the clues around them.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Which points back to that idea of active listening again. Not just letting the sound wash over you, but really tuning in. Listening for the way things are phrased, the common word pairings, the expressions that seem to crop up again and again in certain situations.
The passive hearing to active decoding.
That's the shift the sources advocate for. And when you do hear something you don't get, like touch base or wrap things up, the advice is pretty consistent. Make a note of it mentally, or, as some sources suggest, actually keep a little phrase journal.
Phrase journal, I like that.
And then, if the situation allows, try to ask for clarification right then and there, or look it up later. Sophia's experience, the one at airport immigration.
Oh, yeah, even though her English was good.
All right, she was confident, but the word declare threw her because she hadn't really met it in that specific kind of formal travel context before. Do you have anything to declare?
It sounds quite official, maybe a bit scary even, which is understandable, and her confusion really highlights another layer, doesn't it? How vocabulary can be very specific to certain situations.
Absolutely. And Mark's coffee order trouble for here or to go is such a simple, low-stakes version of that.
Totally.
It's just a binary choice, stay or take away. But if you've never heard that specific phrasing in a busy coffee shop delivered quickly, you might pause, you might guess wrong. And even that tiny hiccup can knock your confidence a bit, can it?
Yeah, it really can. So knowing the typical phrases for common situations helps.
Definitely. The sources list other cafe regulars like, what can I get for you, or next, or that'll be, followed by the price. They're not complicated phrases, grammatically, but they are often said fast, and they're essential for that interaction to go smoothly. The material suggests that just being familiar with them, through hearing them repeatedly, makes navigating those situations much less stressful. It becomes almost automatic.
Like muscle memory for conversation.
Kind of, yeah. And same for immigration, knowing terms like purpose of visit, how long will you be staying, anything to declare. Knowing those beforehand, or at least being ready to ask someone to explain, like Sophia learned to do, it just lowers the anxiety in what can feel like a pretty high-pressure moment.
Right. Which brings us nicely to another big area the sources cover. Small talk.
Ah, the art of small talk.
Yeah. Maria, the example from Spain, She apparently found this really tough at first. She'd focused so much on grammar, formal vocabulary.
Yeah.
She kind of saw casual chat as, I don't know, maybe frivolous, less important.
That's a common perspective, I think.
But the sources make a really strong case for it, don't they? That small talk is actually fundamental for building connections, obviously, but also just for practicing speaking in a relatively safe, low-stakes way, and for learning those natural rhythms of conversation.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is the emphasis on observation for learning small talk.
Yeah.
Maria started listening. How did people start these little chats? How did they answer simple questions like, how was your weekend?
What did she notice?
Patterns. Simple patterns, usually a brief positive-ish response, maybe add one small detail, and then, crucially, turn the question back. It was good, thanks, pretty relaxing, went for a walk. How about yours?
Ah, the return question. Key move.
Very key. The material points out that small talk isn't usually about deep secrets or complex debates. It's more about acknowledging the other person, showing friendly intent, keeping the social gears oiled.
Social choreography. That's what it sounds like.
That's a great way to describe it. So the strategy the sources seem to back is observe the patterns, listen for those common opening lines. How are you doing? Huh, nice weather today, isn't it? What have you been up to? Practice some simple standard responses, and always remember to ask a follow-up question. It's less about the content being amazing and more about participating in the back and forth.
Got it. Okay, so observing patterns, practicing simple exchanges. What about understanding accents and speed? That came up with Daniel's croissant, too.
Hugely important and definitely related. The sources mention things like trying to understand directions in a place like New York City.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. You often get rapid-fire speech, words get squashed or reduced. Someone might say, at the lights, instead of clearly saying at the traffic lights. Plus, you've got regional pronunciations all mixed in.
So your ear needs training. Training to hear past the sort of perfect pronunciation you might have learned and recognize the sounds as they actually come out in the real world?
Exactly. You have to tune into the reality, not just the ideal. And the sources are pretty clear that the best way to do that is exposure to variety.
Variety, meaning
Listening to lots of different native speakers, people with different accents, not just standard British or American, but regional variations within those, plus English speakers from Australia, Ireland, South Africa, speakers influenced by other languages.
Okay.
Different speeds of talking, different situations, formal speeches, casual chats, phone calls, announcements. The more varied your listening input, the better your brain gets at decoding all these variations. Practicing understanding those fast directions or a casual overlapping chat prepares you for the unpredictability of real conversations.
Right. You can't predict exactly how someone will sound. Okay, moving on slightly. What about when things go wrong? Like having a problem or needing to make a complaint?
Yeah, the sources cover that too. There's an example of someone having trouble with the hotel Wi-Fi.
A classic scenario.
A classic. And the point made is about needing clear, calm language, even if you're a bit frustrated. Using phrases like, "Excuse me, I'm having some trouble with the Wi-Fi in my room," or "There seems to be a problem with." Straightforward and polite.
Politeness seems important there.
Crucial. But just as important, the sources say, is listening carefully to the response you get from the hotel staff or whoever you're talking to. They'll often use polite, acknowledging phrases themselves, like, "Oh, I'm very sorry for the inconvenience," or "Right, let me check on that for you." Understanding those reassurances is part of the interaction, too.
That makes sense. It brings up something that seems implicit in a lot of these examples. Different situations need different styles of English, right?
Definitely. Different levels of formality, specific vocabulary.
Complaining about Wi-Fi isn't the same language you'd use chatting with a friend about a movie or, debating politics.
Not at all. The sources suggest really focusing on practicing the specific phrases and understanding the typical flow of conversation for these common scenarios. Service problems, asking for help in a shop, navigating public transport, making appointments.
And knowing how to ask for clarification becomes vital again in those moments, doesn't it?
Absolutely critical. If you didn't quite understand the hotel clerk's explanation about the Wi-Fi, being able to jump in politely with, "Sorry, could you possibly repeat that?" Or, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the last part." That's not a failure. It's a tool. It keeps the conversation going, helps you get the info you need, and builds your confidence because you know you have a way to handle momentary confusion.
Right. You're not just stuck if you miss something.
Yep.
Okay, what about more professional settings? Workplaces?
Yeah, the sources touch on that too. Business jargon comes up, phrases like, "Let's circle back to that later."
Ah, yes. Corporate speak.
Exactly. Means, "Let's return to this topic later." Just like the idioms in casual chat, these specialized phrases are everywhere at work. The advice seems pretty pragmatic. Don't panic if you hear terms you don't know.
Okay.
Maybe jot them down discreetly in a meeting. Look them up afterwards. And then this is key. Try using them yourself. Gently, appropriately. Start weaving them into your own emails or comments until they feel more natural.
So it's that active cycle again. Hear it, understand it, try using it.
Precisely. It's an iterative process. The sources also mention phone calls specifically as being challenging in professional contexts.
Maybe there are no visual cues.
Exactly. You're relying purely on sound, so your own pronunciation might need to be a bit clearer, and you definitely need strategies for clarifying information. Asking things like, sorry, could you speak up just a little, or could you spell out that name for me, please? Those become essential tools for clear communication over the phone.
Even something seemingly simple, like listen to airport announcements, those sources bring that up.
Yeah, they can be tricky, often fast, sometimes muffled, and full of specific jargon. Things like inclement weather or due to unforeseen circumstances.
Standard delay excuses.
Pretty much. Understanding those terms beforehand or being ready to ask a targeted question like, excuse me, could you tell me the reason for the delay on Flight 456? That requires some specific listening practice and vocabulary building. It reduces stress in a potentially stressful situation.
Okay, so a big theme emerging across all these different scenarios, ordering coffee, business meetings, travel problems, seems to be preparation, or maybe anticipation.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, anticipation and preparation. By thinking ahead about common situations you're likely to encounter.
Checking into a hotel, going to a restaurant, attending a team meeting, dealing with potential travel hiccups.
Exactly. You can sort of preload your brain, familiarize yourself with the typical language, the usual flow of conversation for that scenario. It boosts your listening comprehension because you have some expectation of what you might hear, and it makes you feel more ready to respond appropriately yourself.
Even for things like discussing hobbies. The sources suggest that's good practice ground.
Yeah, because it's usually a relaxed context. You can practice using descriptive words, maybe adjectives like fascinating, challenging, relaxing, rewarding, to talk about something you genuinely care about. It's good fluency practice in a low-pressure setting.
And that practice element seems absolutely crucial in all the sources. It's not just learn these phrases, it's do these things.
Absolutely. Doing is key. They mention repeating common phrases out loud. Simple things like, how are you today? Or what have you been up to lately? Or see you later.
Why repeat simple stuff?
It's not just about memorizing the words. It's about building the muscle memory for the sound, the rhythm, the intonation of those basic conversational building blocks, making them automatic.
Okay, that makes sense. Frees up brain space for the harder stuff.
Exactly. Moving back into, say, professional skills, the sources talk about language for meetings and presentations, more specific stuff.
Like what?
Phrases for managing tasks, like, we need to finalize the project timeline, or could you confirm their availability for Tuesday? Clear, concise, action-oriented language. And understanding terms that pop up in meetings, like action items or key takeaways. Knowing what those mean is crucial for actually following the discussion and knowing what you need to do afterwards.
So active listening in meetings is about identifying the important info and the specific language used to talk about it formally.
Right, and the material reinforces that. Then it loops back again to service interactions when there's a problem, just re-emphasizing that need for clear, direct language. There's an issue with my bill, or this isn't working correctly.
And politeness again.
Always. Listening for and using those polite markers, like hearing the service person say, I do apologize for the inconvenience, and responding with, thank you for your help, once it's sorted. The sources highlight how important tone and these little politeness words are for making communication effective, especially when resolving issues. It's something that maybe basic lessons don't stress enough.
Yeah, the how you say it, not just what you say.
Definitely. And that also ties into regional variations. The sources mention Australian slang, for example, like hearing, that's a ripper deal.
Meaning a really good deal, right?
Exactly. Now, the point isn't that you need to memorize every slang term from every English-speaking region.
That would be impossible.
Totally impossible. But the suggestion is to just be aware that these variations exist, to actively listen for them. If you hear slang or colloquialisms in real conversations, maybe make a note. Try to figure out the meaning from context. Understanding them, even if you don't use them yourself right away, just adds another layer to your overall comprehension. It makes the language richer.
It's like expanding your passive vocabulary to include the colorful, informal bits, too.
Yeah. And then there's navigating social events, parties, gatherings with friends or family. The sources talk about this too. The language often shifts again here, right? It becomes warmer, more informal.
It's using words like wonderful, enjoyable, lovely, delightful, maybe.
Exactly. Describing experiences, sharing little stories, practicing expressing personal feelings and anecdotes in these relaxed settings builds a different kind of conversational confidence. Less transactional, more relational.
Okay. What about the modern world? Digital stuff,
Yeah.
emails, texts.
Covered too.
Yeah.
The sources make a really important point about the huge difference in formality we navigate constantly now.
Like between a work email and a text to a friend.
Precisely. The work email needs the formal greetings, dear Mr. Smith, the proper closing, sincerely or best regards, the text to your mate, super casual, hey, maybe abbreviations like LOL or BTW or FYI. Understanding when to use which style, that code switching, is a vital skill. The material stress is being aware of the context and adjusting your formality level appropriately.
That makes sense. You wouldn't text your boss the same way you text your best friend.
Hopefully not. And then exploring cultural things like visiting an art gallery or a museum. That's presented as a chance to practice more descriptive, maybe slightly more abstract language.
How so?
Well, you might ask questions like, what inspired the artist to create this piece? Or you might hear explanations using concepts like, it reflects a sense of inner turmoil, or it explores the conflict between tradition and modernity. This pushes you beyond just everyday survival English. It expands your ability to talk about more complex, nuanced ideas.
Right, using an understanding language that's a bit more sophisticated.
Exactly. And similar ground is covered with academic discussions, like attending a university lecture, maybe on climate change. You need active listening skills to follow complex arguments, pick out key terminology.
And the confidence to ask for clarification if needed.
Definitely. Excuse me, could you please elaborate on the mechanism you just described? Or could you clarify what you meant by mitigation strategy? The sources also suggest summarizing complex information you hear in your own words, maybe just mentally or even jotting notes. It helps you process it, internalize it, and prepares you to contribute your own thoughts to those kinds of discussions later.
Okay. What about just random conversations, like in public?
Yeah, the sources even touch on that. Like maybe you overhear people chatting about renovations in the local park while you're waiting for a bus, and you might want to chime in.
Oh, okay. That takes some confidence.
It does, using phrases like, excuse me, I couldn't help it over here. Yes, I agree, the park looks much better now. Or, have you noticed how much busier it seems since they finished? That requires really quick listening comprehension and then the nerve to smoothly enter an ongoing conversation.
So the sources encourage thinking about how comfortable you are with that and maybe practicing some opening lines for those situations.
Kind of, yeah, reflecting on it. And they also suggest online forums or chat groups as maybe a lower pressure way to practice that kind of thing.
Ah, because it's written.
Partly written, yes, but also because you can observe the flow of very natural, often very informal written English first. You see all the abbreviations, the internet slang things like it's lit or ICYMI in case you missed it.
Right. You get exposed to that constantly shifting online language.
Exactly. It's a huge stream of authentic, albeit informal, language. And you can practice responding in that environment too. Another crucial real-life skill the sources tackle is handling disagreements. Respectfully.
Oh, that's a big one. How do they suggest doing that?
Using specific kinds of phrases, things that acknowledge the other person's view before stating your own. Like, okay, I see your point, but I have a slightly different perspective, or that's an interesting way to look at it, although I tend to think. Or even asking clarifying questions like, could we just clarify what we both mean by fairness in this context?
So it's about the language creating a constructive atmosphere, not a confrontational one.
Precisely. Choosing words that signal respect and a genuine desire to understand, even when you don't agree. It's about the emotional intelligence baked into communication.
That's really interesting. What else? Storytelling.
Storytelling comes up too, yeah. As a great way to improve fluency and just be more engaging when you speak, the advice is basically tell your own stories, recount personal experiences. Focus on using vivid details. Maybe try to convey the emotions you felt. I felt completely overwhelmed at first, but then, or it was such a relief when...
It helps structure your thoughts, I guess.
Yeah.
And makes it more interesting for the listener.
Definitely. And then, looping back again, the sources keep mentioning just repeating phrases you hear as a core technique.
We talked about that with basic greetings.
Yeah, but it applies more broadly, too.
Yep.
Simple responses like, oh, that sounds interesting, or acknowledgments like, got it, or thanks, I appreciate your help. Making those automatic through repetition just frees up your mental energy.
Right, so you can focus on understanding the main message or planning your next thought.
Exactly. And then there's the idea of matching the tone or energy of a situation. Like if you're describing a fantastic live music concert you went to.
I wouldn't just say the concert was adequate.
Hopefully not. You'd use more enthusiastic language, right? It was electrifying. The band had amazing energy. What an incredible performance. And it's not just the words, it's delivering them with that energy too.
So, how again?
The how is vital, according to these sources. Practicing how you say things, varying your pitch, your pace can completely change the impact. They even suggest, like, smiling when you're talking on the phone.
Does that actually work?
Apparently. The idea is that it subtly changes the tone of your voice, makes you sound friendlier, more approachable, even if the other person can't see you. It's about that connection between physical state and vocal delivery.
Huh. Interesting. What other scenarios? Bookstores?
Yeah, simple things like visiting a bookstore, asking for recommendations. Excuse me, could you recommend a good thriller? Or describing what you like. I really enjoy historical fiction because it builds vocabulary related to your personal interests and gives you practice in making polite requests.
And official stuff, like dealing with public services.
Yep. Getting a passport renewed, for example. That requires clear, concise, generally more formal language, hearing, good morning, how may I assist you? And responding appropriately, hi, I need to renew my passport, please. The sources emphasize using those politeness markers, please, thank you, consistently in these more official interactions.
Makes sense. And health situations, that must be important.
Very important. And the key here, according to the sources, is specific, simple language to describe symptoms accurately. I've been experiencing headaches and some fatigue. The pain is quite sharp, and it's located here.
Directness and clarity are key.
Absolutely. Practicing phrases like, I don't feel well, or my main symptoms include, ensures you can communicate effectively and get the medical help you need without ambiguity.
Okay. And video calls. They're so common now.
Right. They add that visual element back in, but also bring their own specific language. Things like, okay, can everyone see my screen now? Or just jumping in here, or please feel free to interrupt if you have any questions.
Standard meeting on camera phrases.
Exactly. And the sources recommend things like joining online webinars or virtual meetups related to your hobbies or professional interests. It's a great way to practice listening and speaking in a structured but still live, real-time environment.
Good idea. What about discussing news or current events?
Also recommended. It helps you practice summarizing information you've read or heard and often requires slightly more formal or objective language, according to the report. Or local communities are organizing efforts to address the recent flooding.
And participating in group discussions or debates on these topics.
That pushes the skills further. You need to articulate your own opinions clearly, but also actively listen to others, using phrases that show you're engaging with their points. I agree with your point about X, Maria, but I wonder if we also need to consider Y. Or social media has certainly revolutionized communication. Don't you think it also presents significant challenges regarding...
The sources stress using language that allows for that respectful disagreement we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Building on ideas, not just stating opinions in isolation. Exactly. And even the simplest shopping scenario. Excuse me, could you tell me where I can find the pasta? Sure, it's on aisle 7. That's revisited just to hammer home how even these super brief, everyday interactions require specific, polite phrasing and listening carefully for key details, like the aisle number.
You need that info.
You do. And handling unexpected little challenges like suddenly getting caught in a downpour. You need impromptu responses, clear communication. Wow, look at that rain. Or it looks like we're in for a real downpour. Quick, let's find some shelter.
Thinking on your feet in English.
Pretty much. And even lighthearted debates are framed as practice. Arguing about favorite foods. No way, Italian food is definitely the best. Well, I love Italian too, but personally I'm also very fond of Thai cuisine because...
Practicing, comparing, contrasting, using descriptive words for preferences.
All good conversational mileage. Then the sources really dig into something crucial, but often less tangible, the nonverbal stuff.
Body language.
Body language, yes. But even in audio-only contexts, like phone calls, tone of voice is huge. Pauses, laughter, sighs, changes in pitch or speed. They convey so much information, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Hesitation, confidence, annoyance, friendliness. It's all in the sound.
Exactly. And the advice is twofold. First, become more aware of these auditory cues when you're listening. What is the tone telling you beyond the words? And second, consciously experiment with your own delivery. How does changing your tone affect how your message is received?
So listening in real life means listening to way more than just the vocabulary.
Way more. It's like listening to the music of the language, not just the lyrics. Tuning into the emotion, the intention behind the words, conveyed by how they're said. The sources make a really powerful point here. Every single interaction, no matter how small or how difficult it feels, is a chance to learn, to practice, to get better.
And visualizing success, does that help?
The sources suggest it can, yeah. Mentally rehearsing successful conversations, picturing yourself feeling confident and communicating clearly can be a good motivational technique for some people, building that positive self-image as a communicator.
Taking it up another notch, the sources also talk about engaging in more structured debates, maybe on current events again, not just to state opinions, but as a specific practice method.
Right. Because a good debate forces you to practice a whole suite of skills. Active listening to understand complex points, processing information quickly, formulating your own arguments logically, articulating them clearly, and building constructively on what others have said, it really pushes your conversational abilities.
That sounds challenging but rewarding.
Definitely. And then there's some very practical, actionable techniques suggested. We mentioned the conversation journal earlier, jotting down new phrases, maybe reflecting on interactions that felt difficult, noting down ideas for things you want to practice.
What else? Role-playing.
Role-playing gets highlighted too, even just by yourself. Practicing different scenarios, maybe switching roles. 1 minute you're the customer, the next you're the service provider, or the interviewer and the interviewee. It helps internalize vocabulary and builds mental flexibility for different conversational dynamics.
Makes sense. Practicing both sides of the conversation.
Exactly. And discussing more abstract topics comes up as well, things like dreams, future ambitions, maybe even philosophical ideas.
How did that help with practical conversation?
It pushes you to develop critical thinking skills in English. You have to use more nuanced language, qualifying statements, expressing complex thoughts, asking open-ended questions like, what do you think is the most important quality for personal growth? Or articulating your own beliefs forces you to move beyond concrete, everyday vocabulary and grapple with more abstract concepts.
Stretching your linguistic muscles.
Precisely. Another key strategy mentioned repeatedly is varying your input sources. We touched on listening to different accents, but it's broader than that. Listen to podcasts from different countries or on different subjects, watch interviews with diverse speakers, read aloud from different genres of text news articles, novels, scripts. All of this exposes you to different styles, different vocabulary sets, different rhythms of speech.
And shadowing. I think that was mentioned.
Shadowing, yes. That's specifically recommended. Listening to a native speaker, maybe from an audiobook with clear pronunciation, and trying to speak along at the same time, mimicking their pace, rhythm, and intonation as closely as possible. It's a powerful technique for improving your own pronunciation, flow, and overall fluency.
Like tracing over someone else's speech pattern.
Kind of, yeah. It helps tune your ear and your mouth to the natural music of English. Language learning apps are also acknowledged as potentially useful tools.
The ones that give pronunciation feedback.
Those, yeah. Or apps with specific listening exercises. They can be a valuable supplement to real-life practice, offering structured drills and feedback. And finally, the sources circle back to things like joining workshops or using those informal digital spaces we mentioned, online communities, language exchange platforms.
Why are those helpful again?
Because they force you to adapt your language in real time. You practice responding spontaneously, you learn from a huge variety of interactions, formal, informal, written, sometimes spoken, and you get exposed to how people actually communicate online right now.
Okay, so looking back at all these techniques, all these scenarios, there's a really strong core message coming through from the sources, isn't there?
Absolutely. It's that mastering real-life English. It's not passive. You can't just absorb it by osmosis, really. It's an active journey. It requires continuous engagement.
Every single conversation counts.
Every single one. From ordering that coffee to debating philosophy, each one is a learning opportunity. The absolute key, woven through everything, is to listen deeply, not just for the words, but for the sounds, the speed, the tone, the context, the nonverbals. And then you have to be brave. You have to take what you've noticed, what you've learned, and actually put it into practice. Speak. Now, shifting slightly, what about sharing a general opinion? Not just your personal view, but something widely believed or accepted.
The source provides specific phrases for this too. Things like, It's said that.
Oh.
It's believed that. I've heard that.
Yeah.
It's considered that. It's generally accepted that. Most agree that. Some say that.
Okay. Ways to attribute the opinion more broadly.
Yes. And a strong one. It goes without saying that. This implies it's obvious, but you're stating it for emphasis.
Right.
And if the opinion comes from experts, researchers suggest that, or experts agree that.
And can you combine these general opinion starters with your own view?
Absolutely. The source shows this. Like, it's generally accepted that practice is key, and personally, I couldn't agree more. Or, some say X is true, however, from my point of view, Y is the case. It lets you position your personal take relative to the common view.
Very useful for structuring arguments or participating in discussions. Lastly, how does the source suggest we ask for someone else's opinion?
Lots of ways here, too. The direct ones. Do you agree? What's your opinion? What do you think? What are your thoughts? What's your view? How do you see the situation? What's your take on it?
And simpler, more conversational ways.
Especially after you've just given your opinion, you can use, what about you? Or, how about you?
Right, turning it back to them.
And if you want to ask about their specific experience related to the topic, has that been your experience, or what has your experience been? The source also lists, are we on the same page? Again, here, in the context of seeking agreement. And is that something you would support too?
Okay, another really comprehensive toolkit. Just having these phrases for agreeing, disagreeing, sharing personal or general views, and asking for opinions gives you so much more flexibility and nuance.
It really moves you beyond just basic statements. Okay, next up, the source tackles something it calls the secret to really elevating your English, transition words.
Ah, yes, the connectors. It makes a big claim for them, but honestly, they are incredibly important. They're like the signposts and the glue for your ideas. They show how sentences and paragraphs relate to each other, making everything flow logically.
And the source stresses they're not just for formal writing, right? They're key in spoken English, too.
Exactly. They help your listener follow your train of thought. The source mentions covering over 50 of them, grouped by function.
Okay, let's look at the categories. First up, cause and effect, or causation.
Right. These words show that one thing caused or resulted in another. The basic example given is, I spilled my coffee. As a result, I changed my shirt. Spilling led to changing. The source lists words from more formal to less formal. Consequently, hence, accordingly, thus, for that reason, as a result, therefore, and so, since, because, due to.
And the formality really matters here, doesn't it? You wouldn't usually say, hence, I changed my shirt after spilling coffee.
Probably not. But in a business context, the source gives the example. The project is over budget. Consequently, hence, therefore, we need to cut costs. There, the more formal words fit perfectly. You choose based on the situation.
Makes sense. Next category, chronology showing time sequence.
Ordering events, the simple example. First, I went to the store. Then I worked out. Finally, I made dinner. The source gives options for the first step. Firstly, to start, to begin, at the beginning or at the start.
And for the steps in between, second, third, etc.
Secondly, afterwards, next. Then subsequently, later. The source points out that many of these can be used repeatedly, so it's good to vary them if you have a longer sequence to avoid sounding robotic, like first, then, after that, next.
Good tip. And for the very last step.
Finally, lastly, and the nice phrase, last but not least, these clearly signal the end of the sequence.
Okay, chronological order covered. How about contrast, showing opposing ideas?
Right. Example. I love ice cream. However, I'm lactose intolerant. Two conflicting ideas. The source lists transitions again, roughly from formal to informal. However, nonetheless, still in contrast. On the other hand, conversely, while, whereas.
And again, formality dictates the choice. I love ice cream, but I'm lactose intolerant. Super common, casual. I love ice cream, however, I'm lactose intolerant. Sounds more formal, maybe written.
Exactly, or using while or although at the beginning. Although I love ice cream, I'm lactose intolerant. Different structure, same contrast.
What about adding similar ideas? The addition category.
This is for linking related points. Example, I love ice cream. Furthermore, I love cake. The source lists. Furthermore, moreover, further, these are quite formal. Then additionally, in addition, also, and as well as, coupled with, along with, together with.
So instead of just short, choppy sentences, you get, I love ice cream, and I also love cake.
Right.
Or, I love ice cream, as well as cake. Smoother.
Precisely. Connects the thoughts. Next, generality for statements that are true most of the time, but maybe not always.
Like, Generally speaking, our meetings are productive.
Exactly. The source lists, in general, generally speaking, by and large, for the most part, most of the time, more often than not, usually, typically, mostly, all ways to qualify a statement as generally true.
Okay, giving examples.
This is straightforward. The source gives the main three, for example, as an example. And for instance, use these to introduce specific cases that illustrate a general point. Our new software is great. For instance, it's cut down report generation time by 50%.
Makes the general point stronger, more believable. How about emphasis?
This is for adding extra weight or support to a statement. The source gives the example, I love pie. And the transition words are in fact and as a matter of fact. So, I love pie. In fact, I ate a whole one yesterday.
Adding that extra punch. Finally, transitions for conclusion.
Right. Signaling that you're wrapping up your thoughts, summarizing, or ending a presentation. Listed from more formal to less formal. In conclusion, to conclude, to summarize, in sum, all things considered, finally, overall, ultimately, in the end, to wrap up, to sum up, all in all.
So you could end a speech with, in conclusion, I urge you to consider. Or finish a casual summary with, so, all in all, it was a pretty good trip.
Exactly. Sets the expectation that you're finishing.
That covers the main types. But the source had a bonus tip about using these to expand simple ideas, right?
Yes, and this is a really practical technique it highlights. It shows how you can take one simple sentence and build it out into more complex, flowing explanation using different transition words. The starting example is, in general, our meetings are very productive.
Okay, simple statement. How does it expand?
First, it adds a contrasting idea. However, they usually run over time.
Introducing a downside.
Then it gives a specific example of that downside. For example, today's meeting was scheduled for an hour, but it went for an hour and 20 minutes.
Making it concrete.
Then it shows a consequence, a cause and effect. As a result, I was late for my next appointment. And finally, it adds another related point using addition. Additionally, this happens quite often, which impacts my schedule.
Wow. So you went from meetings are productive to a whole paragraph explaining a nuanced situation just by using however, for example, as a result, and additionally.
Exactly. It demonstrates how transitions allow you to layer ideas and build a much richer, more coherent explanation from a simple starting point. The source really encourages listeners to practice doing this.
That's incredibly powerful. It's not just about sounding fancy, it's about communicating more effectively and completely.
It really does make your English sound more organized and sophisticated. Okay, so we've covered general tools. Now the source zooms in on a very specific context. Essential phrases for tourists visiting North America.
Super practical if you're planning a trip, or even if you interact with tourists where you live.
Definitely. It starts by quickly recapping the basics we already covered. Standard greetings like hello, hi there, time-specific ones, and crucially, using, to get attention.
And reminding us that, is mainly for when you didn't hear or understand.
Yes, reinforcing that key distinction for travelers. How about stating why you're somewhere, like at a restaurant reception?
We have a reservation under name. Or if you're asking for information, the source stresses politeness again with, could you please tell me?
Politeness first. And the inevitable situation, you don't understand something, what phrases does the source recommend here?
It repeats the key ones. Excuse me, with that questioning tone. Sorry, I didn't catch that. But it adds a really important piece of advice for tourists.
Which is?
Be upfront about it. Say, sorry, English isn't my first language.
Oh, that's excellent advice. It immediately contextualizes any difficulties, and people are usually much more understanding and helpful.
Exactly. And the source says, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Can you repeat that slower, please? Or ask about specific words. I'm not sure what X means. Or can you explain it a different way? And if all else fails, a simple, sorry, I don't understand, still works.
Practical lifelines for navigating communication hurdles. Okay, let's talk shopping. Lots of interactions there.
Right. Starting the interaction is usually just a simple greeting. When it comes to paying, the source notes card payment is pretty much the default now. Cash is less common, maybe for small vendors. They'll often just point to the card machine.
How do you ask the price of something?
Keep it simple. How much is this for one item? Or how much are these for multiple?
Bags are a common point of interaction at checkout.
Yes. They might ask, do you need a bag? Or even just bag with a rising tone. The source explains that paper bags are common now, often have a small cost, and plastic bags might be banned, so having your own reusable bag is smart. If you need one, can you give me a bag, please? Or I need to buy a bag. Putting please at the end often sounds more natural, the source notes.
Little nuances like that help. What about receipts?
They'll ask, need a receipt, or want a receipt, or just receipt. Your options are, no, that's okay, no thanks, or yes, please.
And those extra questions they sometimes ask before you pay. Donations, loyalty cards.
The source has a great tip here. If you've scanned your items but they ask something you don't understand before you pay, it's probably optional, like a charity donation or signing up for a store card. If you're unsure, a polite no thanks is always a safe answer.
Smart. What about in clothing stores when staff approach you?
If you're just looking, the source suggests, I'm just looking or I'm just browsing. If you do need help, I'm looking for item, like a blue scarf. Or ask where things are. Where can I find men's shoes? Or ask if they stock something. Do you carry item? Like, do you carry umbrellas?
And trying clothes on, where can I try this on? Or ask for the specific rooms. Where are the fitting rooms? Or where are the changing rooms?
And if you might need to return something later.
Ask up front. What's your return policy? Okay, shopping covered. Now, restaurant dining. Another key tourist interaction.
Arrival. Greeting, then state your party size. Table for 2, please. Or, if you booked, we have a reservation under name to make one. Can we make a reservation? They'll need to know when, how many people, and what time.
Can you request specific seating?
Yes. Do you have any tables outside or onto the patio? Can we sit by the window, please? Are there any booths available?
Dietary needs very important to communicate clearly.
Definitely. State allergies directly. I'm allergic to peanuts. For modifications, the source gives examples like, can you make that vegetarian? Or .vegan, or .gluten-free.
How about ordering the food itself?
The most common and natural way is I'll have, followed by the dish name, like I'll have the salmon, or slightly more formal, I'd like the salmon.
And modifying orders, is that okay?
The source emphasizes that yes, modifying orders is very common and perfectly acceptable in North America. You can add things, can you add extra cheese, you can remove things, but no onions, please, or hold the onions, or without onions.
Hold the onions. That's a classic restaurant phrase.
It is. You can also ask for specific preparations. Could you make it extra spicy or ask for things separately? Can you put the sauce on the side? Don't be shy about asking for reasonable modifications.
Good to know. What about drinks, especially water?
Ask politely. Can you bring us some water, please? They might ask sparkling or still bottled. If you just want regular tap water, the source says to reply, tap water is fine. It notes tap water is usually free and perfectly safe to drink everywhere, sometimes called house water.
Very useful local knowledge. Finding the facilities.
Ask where are the bathrooms or where are the restrooms. The source specifically advises against using the word toilets in this question.
Ah, good cultural note. What about leftovers if you can't finish your meal?
Very common to take leftovers home. Ask, can I have a to-go box, please? Or can you wrap this up or could you pack this up? All mean the same thing.
And getting the bill at the end?
When you're finished, maybe decline dessert or coffee. Then say, just the check, please, or just the bill, please. Check and bill are interchangeable. Or ask directly anytime, can you bring me the check bill, please? You might also need to ask, where do I pay, if it's not clear.
And the tipping situation.
The source explains tips, or gratuity, are rarely included automatically, but are generally expected, usually 10–20% of the bill. You typically add this yourself, often selecting an option on the card machine when you pay.
Okay. One more modern necessity, Wi-Fi.
Yes. Ask, do you have Wi-Fi? Or is there Wi-Fi here? To get the password. What's the Wi-Fi password? If it's long or complicated, the source suggests asking them to write it down, repeat slowly, or even just handing them your phone to type it in directly.
Practical tips. Okay.
Yeah.
Shifting from places to movement, getting around.
The source notes that with smartphones and GPS, asking strangers for directions is less common now, but it still provides the key phrases.
Always good to have just in case.
Right. Always start politely with, excuse me, then, excuse me, do you know how to get to place X? Excuse me, which way is place Y for transit? Excuse me, does this bus train go to destination Z? Excuse me, which bus train will take me to destination Z?
Straightforward. And that other common request tourists often make of strangers.
Asking someone to take their photo. Excuse me, do you mind taking our photo? The source highlights the ing form, gerund, after do you mind? Another option. Excuse me, could you please take our picture? Photo and picture are interchangeable here.
Perfect. And the source ends this tour section with a reassuring thought.
It does. It reminds listeners that people in North America interact with non-native English speakers all the time, are generally friendly and patient, and that having an accent or making occasional mistakes is perfectly fine and won't ruin your trip. The goal is clear communication, and these phrases help achieve that.
That's a great takeaway. It's about connection, not perfection. Okay, let's change gears significantly now. The source moves into more advanced phrases for quite formal situations, specifically mentioning things like the IELTS exam or job interviews.
Right, this is about polishing your language for situations where precision and sounding proficient really matter. The source provides over 30 phrases for this context. Where does it start?
With the basics, talking about where you live but doing it formally, the recommended core phrase is, I was born and raised in place X. It emphasizes the past simple tense and the preposition in.
Okay. How do you add more detail, like where you live now or for how long?
You can add contrast. But now I live in place Y. For duration, use the present perfect. I've lived here for over Z years. Or, for ongoing actions like living, working, studying, the present perfect continuous sounds very natural. I've been living here for over Z years.
And you can vary how you state the time period, Z years.
Yes, be specific for 5 years. Or, more general, for several years, for many years, for a number of years. Gives you flexibility.
Okay. How about talking about your work formally?
Start with your job title, and the source stresses using the article A or N. I'm a software engineer. I'm an accountant. If your position is unique, use the, often mentioning the company. I'm the marketing director at XYZ Corp.
The source suggests using a gerund statement for a general comment about your job.
Yes, this sounds quite sophisticated. Being an engineer is very rewarding. Using that ink form to start the sentence.
And talking about what you enjoy, using verbs of preference.
I love using my problem-solving skills, or I enjoy collaborating with my team. The structure is verb of preference, love, enjoy, etc., followed by a gerund ing form. The source suggests adding strong adjectives too. I enjoy brainstorming unique solutions to complex problems. Elevates the description.
Right.
Nice. And acknowledging the downsides or challenges.
Use a contrast transition word like, however, followed by maybe another gerund statement. However, being an engineer also has its challenges. Then specify the challenge, perhaps using specifically. Specifically, deadlines can be very demanding, and sometimes they have to work around the clock. Work around the clock. That's a good idiom the source includes for intense work periods.
Exactly. Combining these elements, gerunds, strong adjectives, transitions, idioms, creates a really impressive, detailed answer. How about discussing hobbies formally?
The source suggests, starting with an opinion statement, again, maybe using a gerund, in my opinion, having hobbies is integral to living a fulfilling life. Shows you value work-life balance.
Okay. Then how do you state your specific hobby?
Use the phrase, I'm an avid X. Avid is the key adjective here, meaning very interested or enthusiastic. And X is the noun form of the hobby. I'm an avid hiker, an avid reader, an avid photographer, an avid guitar player. Structure is to be an avid plus noun.
Avid sounds much stronger than just I like.
It does. Then, explain why you enjoy it, perhaps with another gerund statement. Hiking gives me the opportunity to disconnect and appreciate nature. The source notes you generally use the ing form, hiking, or sometimes the activity noun, playing guitar gives me, or guitar gives me.
What if you don't really have hobbies right now? Maybe because you've been focused on work or study, but you intend to start one. How do you handle that in an interview?
The source provides great phrasing for this. You can acknowledge your past focus. Until now, my primary focus has been on my career, using present perfect. Then signal the change with, however. 2 options follow. However, I'm considering taking up hobby. Take up is the phrasal verb for starting a hobby, and consider needs the gerund taking up.
Okay, considering taking up, what's the other option?
Using would love. However, I'd love to take up hobby. Would love is followed by the infinitive to take up. You can then add the future benefit using a gerund statement. Drawing will give me a chance to express my creativity.
And you can add certainty or hope.
Yes. I am confident that drawing will, or I'm hopeful that drawing will, shows positive intention.
That's a really polished way to talk about hobbies, even future ones. Okay, family, how to describe family relationships formally.
A key phrase is, I'm from a close-knit family. Close-knit is a great adjective meaning tightly connected and supportive. An alternative. My family and I are very close.
And if everyone gets along well...
Everyone in my family gets along really well. The source points out that everyone takes a singular verb, gets, and suggests extremely well sounds even more advanced than really well.
Good tip. And that idiom about resemblance.
Everyone says I take after my mom in looks, and I take after my dad in personality. The source explains take after means to resemble someone, physically or in character. Very useful for these kinds of descriptions.
Definitely. Okay, travel. How to talk about travel aspirations formally.
Expressing desire using would love. I'd love the opportunity to see travel to visit place. The source notes the prepositions carefully. Travel to Egypt, but see Egypt, or visit Egypt. No preposition needed before the place.
Subtle but important distinction. Using hypotheticals.
The second conditional works well here. If I could travel anywhere in the world, I'd choose Japan. Structure. If plus past simple, would plus base verb.
And using a gerund statement to show it's a high priority.
Visiting Japan is at the top of my travel list, meaning it's your #1 desired destination.
Can you make that sound like a long-held dream?
Yes, using present perfect. Traveling to Japan has been at the top of my list for as long as I can remember. Then add why. From my perspective, its unique blend of ancient tradition and modern technology is fascinating.
And the source had a very advanced phrase for expressing the anticipated enjoyment.
It did. And I'd revel in the opportunity to experience the culture firsthand. Revel in the opportunity plus infinitive means to take great pleasure or delight in the chance to do something. Sounds very sophisticated.
It really does. Fantastic phrases for formal contexts. Now, the source also included some bonus safety net phrases for clarification, right? If you're answering a question and feel like you're not expressing yourself clearly.
Yes. These are lifesavers in high-pressure situations like exams or interviews. The source recommends memorizing a few. They include, what I'm trying to say is, what I'm trying to get at is.
Ways to pause and rephrase.
Exactly. Also, to put it another way, and in other words, and one that acknowledges the other person's point while clarifying yours. I get what you're saying, but. The source notes get is more casual for understand. The formal version is, I understand what you're saying, but.
Having those ready can really boost confidence. Okay, that covers a lot of formal ground. Now let's zoom in even further. Advanced phrases specifically for the workplace. The source lists 25 professional phrases.
Right, these are the kinds of expressions you'll hear and want to use to sound fluent and integrated in a North American professional setting. Let's maybe pick out some key ones and discuss how the source explains their use. First up, I'm on board with that.
Okay, on board. What does that signify?
It means you agree with a proposal or plan. You support it. The source gives the example. We discussed the new marketing strategy, and the whole team is on board. It reminds us to conjugate to be, I am, he's, we're on board, and use the preposition with, on board with the plan.
Got it. Agreement and support. Are we on the same page?
We saw this earlier, but in a work context, it's specifically checking for shared understanding or agreement about a work-related topic before moving forward. Example. Okay, before we finalize the report, are we all on the same page regarding the key findings? It prevents misunderstandings later.
Crucial check-in. It's a win-win situation.
This describes a scenario where both parties or all involved benefit. The source actually uses its own masterclass as an example. The creators benefit and you, the learner, benefit. A mutually advantageous outcome.
Nice example. What are your thoughts on this?
A standard, polite way to solicit opinions or feedback at work. Much better than just, what do you think? Sometimes. The source notes you should specify the topic. What are your thoughts on the latest sales figures?
We need to think outside the box.
A very common call for creative or unconventional thinking, especially when facing a difficult problem. Our usual approaches aren't working. We really need to think outside the box for this campaign.
Encouraging innovation. Let's circle back to that later.
This means postponing discussion of a topic, usually due to time limits or needing more info. That's a valid point, but let's circle back to it after we've covered the main agenda items. The source notes it's often used as an imperative. Let's.
A common way to manage meeting agendas. We need to prioritize our tasks.
Simply means organizing work based on importance and urgency. Okay, team, we have a lot on our plates this week. Let's prioritize our tasks first thing Monday morning.
Please keep me in the loop.
A request to be kept informed about updates or progress on something. I'll be out of the office tomorrow, but please keep me in the loop on any developments with the client. The source highlights using please for politeness and the preposition on keep me in the loop on this issue.
Good details. Have they ironed out the details?
This means asking if the specific, often complicated points of an agreement, plan, or contract have been fully resolved and clarified. Did they sign the contract? Not yet. They're still ironing out the final details. The source notes the pronunciation ironed out.
Resolving the fine print. I'm all ears.
Another idiom reappearing in the workplace. It signals you're ready and willing to listen attentively, maybe to a proposal or someone's concerns. You have an idea? Okay, I'm all ears.
Let's take a step back.
This suggests pausing the current discussion or activity to reconsider the situation from a broader perspective. We're getting bogged down in minor issues. Let's take a step back and look at the big picture, again, often used imperatively.
Gain perspective. I beg to differ.
The source describes this as a formal and polite way to state disagreement in a professional setting. It's softer than, I disagree. With all due respect, I beg to differ on that point.
Polite disagreement. I'll cut to the chase.
Used again here professionally. It means getting directly to the main point, skipping introductory remarks, often to save time or because the information is critical. Okay, everyone, I know you're busy, so I'll cut to the chase. We met the sales target. The source notes the I will structure.
Getting straight to it. Run it by the team first.
This means to share an idea or plan with a specific group or person to get their input, feedback, or approval before proceeding. It sounds like a good initiative, but run it by the marketing team first. Run it by someone.
Seeking input or approval. Person calls the shots.
An idiom meaning a specific person has the authority and makes the important decisions. Don't ask me, ask Sarah. She calls the shots on this project. The source notes shots is always plural.
Identifying the decision maker. The ball's in person's court.
Used professionally, this means it's now someone else's responsibility to act or decide. We've submitted our proposal. Now the ball's in the client's court.
Shifting responsibility. We need to nip this in the bud.
Another idiom applied to work. It means stopping a small problem early before it becomes a bigger issue. I've noticed a few people bending the rules on expenses. We need to nip that in the bud right away. Notes the verb nip.
Early intervention. It's not my cup of tea.
Used even professionally to express personal dislike or lack of interest in something, usually politely. He asked me to manage the social media account, but honestly, it's not really my cup of tea.
Expressing preference politely. They hammered out the agreement.
Similar to ironed out, but often implies more negotiation or effort was involved in reaching the final agreement or plan. After 3 days of intense talks, they finally hammered out a deal, often used in the past tense.
Reaching a difficult agreement. We're swamped right now.
A very common informal way to say you're extremely busy, overloaded with work. Can you help with this? I'd love to, but I'm absolutely swamped this week. The source notes it's to be swamped, using the ed form.
Very busy. We'll take that into consideration.
A standard, somewhat formal phrase used to acknowledge feedback or a suggestion, indicating it will be thought about during decision-making without necessarily promising to adopt it. Thank you for your suggestion. We'll take that into consideration.
Acknowledging input. We need to think long-term.
Emphasizes considering the future implications of decisions, not just immediate results. This solution works now, but we need to think long-term about its sustainability.
Future focus. Sorry, I'm tied up.
Means you're busy or occupied and therefore unavailable. Could you join the call? Sorry, I'm tied up in another meeting right now. The source notes you can specify what you're tied up with.
Unavailable due to being busy. Let's put our heads together.
A call for collaboration or brainstorming, suggesting that collective thinking will yield better results. This is a tricky problem. Let's put our heads together and see what we can come up with.
Collaboration. And the last one. To play devil's advocate.
This means arguing against a position or proposal, not because you necessarily disagree, but deliberately to test its weaknesses and explore counter-arguments. I actually support the plan, but let me play devil's advocate for a moment. What if our main competitor reacts this way? It's a technique to ensure thorough consideration.
Exploring opposing views critically. Wow, that's another incredibly useful set of phrases. Using those correctly would definitely make someone sound more professionally fluent.
Absolutely. It's like learning the specific language of that environment. Okay, building even further, the source dedicates a section to advanced phrases specifically for job interviews, often tied to common questions. Over 50 expressions here.
Right, because interviews are such a high-stakes formal situation. Having precise and impressive language is key. How does the source suggest tackling that all-important opening? Tell me about yourself.
It provides a crucial starting phrase. I have more than over almost X years of experience. It explains more than or over if it's above X, almost if it's just below. And it suggests using round numbers like almost 10 years if you have 9.
Okay, quantifying experience clearly. Then add your role.
Yes, as a Gaian job title. Again, stress in the article, a Gaian, you can also specify the field, in the finance field, or in the healthcare industry, or in the nonprofit sector.
Got it. How about describing your responsibilities in those roles?
Use the structure. In this role, current. In that role, past. I was responsible for, using the correct tense. And the source makes a vital grammar point here. After responsible for, you must use a gerund verb, ending in ing.
Ah, so not responsible for manage, but responsible for managing.
Exactly. The source lists common verbs that fit. Managing, overseeing, leading, coordinating, creating, developing, reviewing, improving, streamlining, which it defines as making process efficient, analyzing.
Good list of action verbs. And the source suggests using stronger adjectives than just a lot of experience.
Yes, words like extensive experience or significant experience sound more professional. You can follow these with a gerund verb, extensive experience managing budgets, or a noun phrase, significant project management experience.
Elevating the language. Okay, education and credentials.
4 degrees. I have a bachelor, of master, a PhD in subject. Again, the article A is important. Mentioning the university and year is optional. More formal verbs. I received my master's from, or I obtained my PhD from.
And for certification.
Similar verbs. I received, complete, obtained my certification name in year field. The source notes that if the certification acronym, like PMP, CPA, is well known in your field, you often don't need to spell it out unless asked.
Good practical tip. How about discussing personal strengths effectively?
The source suggests a transition like, as for my strengths, then highlight a quality using I'm extremely adjective. It recommends extremely over really or very for a stronger impression. Common adjectives listed include hardworking, committed, trustworthy, honest, focused, methodical, proactive.
And team player is handled differently.
Yes, the source points out it's a noun phrase. I'm a team player, not I'm extremely team player.
Right. What about specific skills, like the ones often listed in job ads, communication, problem solving, etc.?
The structure recommended is, I have advanced, superior, excellent skills. Skills mentioned include time management, communication, adaptability, problem solving, teamwork, creativity, leadership, interpersonal skills, attention to detail. Choose the adjective that fits your level.
And there's a specific adjective for work ethic.
Yes, the source highlights it's always, I have a strong work ethic. Use strong specifically here.
And you can combine these strength statements.
Definitely. I have superior communication skills, and I'm also extremely proactive and have a strong work ethic. Layering them shows multiple strengths.
Okay. For the question, why are you interested in this position? What kind of phrasing works well?
The source focuses on growth and gaining experience. Phrases like, I'm looking for an opportunity to further my skills in X, or to develop my skills in X, or I'm looking for an opportunity to gain experience in the Y field industry sector. Connects your goals to the role.
Right, showing ambition and relevance. Finally, how does the source suggest concluding an answer or the interview itself to leave a really positive, lasting impression?
It stresses ending strongly, not just trailing off or saying a simple thank you. It provides a powerful template. I believe I'm confident that my extensive X skills, mention a key skill relevant to the job, would make me a valuable asset to your company team organization.
Connecting your skills directly to their needs.
Exactly. And then add a forward-looking statement, and I look forward to the opportunity to contribute to your goals. The source advises tailoring this, mentioning specific skills from the job description, and referencing the company's actual goals if you know them.
That's a very strong, confident closing. And the source included a practice tip related to this.
Yes, it suggested practicing answering, tell me about yourself, using all these different phrases. The guide itself prompted users to do it in its comment section, but the takeaway for you, the listener, is to actively practice constructing these kinds of answers yourself.
Practice is definitely the key to making these advanced phrases feel natural when you need them.
Absolutely. We have covered an enormous amount of ground today, dissecting this vocabulary masterclass, from the nuances of simple greetings all the way through idioms, opinions, transitions, tourist essentials, and these very specific advanced phrases for work and interviews.
It's a truly comprehensive toolkit. The sheer number of phrases and strategies for expressing even simple ideas differently is quite staggering when you lay it all out.
And the core message seems to be that by understanding the context, the subtle variations, and how to actually use these phrases, you really can significantly shift how natural you sound, how well you understand native speakers, and just how confident you feel navigating all sorts of English-speaking situations.
This deep dive aimed to give you that structured understanding quickly, highlighting those aha moments from the source material without overwhelming you, moving you from just knowing words to using the language fluidly.
It's like getting the playbook for more natural communication.
It really is. And reflecting on everything we've unpacked, The dozens of ways to say thank you, or I don't know, the layers of formality, the richness of idioms. What does all that variety tell us about the English language itself, about its flexibility? And maybe more importantly for you, the listener, how could trying out just one or two new phrases from this deep dive potentially change the feel of your very next conversation?
That's a great question to ponder, something to take away and experiment with.
Definitely food for thought.